remember the early days when I felt like my family was abandoning me. My kind-hearted mom always stood by my sister, even though she kept stealing money from me. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she would defend my sister and never believe me. I felt invisible in my mom's eyes. Then, things only got worse when I reached out to my dad for help. The story began when I was 17, and my family started falling apart. Even though she loved us deeply, my mom always had a different perspective regarding my sister. My sister, although a child with limited understanding, had stolen money from me multiple times. At first, I didn't dare speak up because I feared mom would get angry, but the situation kept happening. I was cautious about where I kept my money, even hiding it in places I thought were safe. But before long, my money disappeared again in a way that made no sense. Whenever I discovered it missing, my sister acted innocent and claimed she knew nothing. The anger and disappointment I felt grew stronger inside me. When I decided to tell my mom, I hoped she would understand and help me solve the problem. However, mom immediately defended my sister instead of listening and trying to understand. She said my sister was too young to do that, and I might have misunderstood. She even told me I needed to learn how to forgive and not make a big deal out of it. Every time this happened, I felt abandoned. My mom was always on my sister's side, never asking how I felt. In her eyes, my sister was always the innocent child, while I, no matter how hard I tried, was just a loud and troublesome son. Mom always made it seem like I was the one in the wrong and my sister was the one to be pitied. I didn't know how to get my mom to take this situation seriously. After a while, I didn't want to tell her anything anymore, but I couldn't just stay silent forever. Ultimately, I decided to take matters into my own hands to protect my rights. For the past 2 years, I haven't just lived like an ordinary 17-year-old. I've had to work hard to earn money. My mom isn't wealthy, and life in our family has never been easy. We lived in an old house where everything needed constant repairs and attention. So, I kept working, hoping to earn enough money to help improve our situation. Every morning, while other kids were still sleeping in, I was up early to garden, water the plants, and clean the yards for homes in the neighborhood. This work wasn't always easy, especially during the hot summer or cold winter months. Tasks like cleaning, mowing the lawn, or gardening didn't pay much, but I knew I had to do it to cover daily expenses and save up for the things I wanted to do. Every day, I worked with all my strength. Even though I was tired, I never complained. After school, I'd continue working until it got dark. Some nights, I barely had time for a quick dinner before diving back into work, sometimes without even thinking about what I wanted to do in the future. Over those 2 years, I had saved up $3,000. With that money, I could do a lot. Buy books, take care of my mom and little sister, and even help the family if necessary. I also thought about using that money to invest in important things for the future. I felt proud of what I had achieved, but I also realized that you can't control everything when you try to help those around you. One weekend, I stored the money I had saved in an old box in my room. I was sure it was the safest place. However, not long after, my money disappeared. I was stunned and angry. My little sister, even though I had told her not to go near my money, once again couldn't control her greed. I couldn't bear the feeling of being betrayed like that. All the things I had done, the hard work I had put in, were destroyed by one selfish act. It made me feel like all my efforts were pointless. My mom didn't believe me, and my sister just kept lying. No matter how much effort I put into it, my life seemed unable to stay peaceful, which made me rethink what I had hoped to achieve. Every time I caught my little sister stealing money from me, I felt angry, but deep down, I was also incredibly disappointed. I couldn't understand why she would act like that when I only wanted to save up a little money to do the things I dreamed of and help the family. But she didn't think about my feelings. She took what I had worked so hard for. I tried everything to keep my money safe. At first, I just kept it in secret drawers, but she still found it. Then, I decided to buy a safe and hide the money there. I was doing the right thing since no one could open my safe without the code. However, as soon as I went out when I came back, I found my safe broken open, and the money was gone. I honestly didn't understand how my sister could have known how to open the safe, but clearly, she had figured it out. I had no choice but to talk to my mom. I told her what my sister had done and asked her to do something about it. But what hurt me the most was my mom's reaction. She didn't believe me and instead sided with my sister. Mom said maybe I was mistaken or my sister didn't have bad intentions when she took my money. She even told me I should pay more attention to managing my belongings. Every time this happened, I felt like I wasn't part of this family anymore. Mom didn't understand my pain and didn't see the effort I had put in. Instead, she kept defending my sister without thinking about my feelings. I tried to explain, but all my words were ignored, and my sister continued to do wrong without facing any consequences. This made me feel like I lived in a world where all my efforts were unrecognized. I worked hard and saved every penny to help the family, but what I did seemed meaningless. In my mom's eyes, it felt like my sister was always right and I was always wrong. The feeling of being abandoned in my own home made me lose faith in my family. Feeling utterly disappointed and unable to bear it any longer, I decided to call my dad. I felt like I had reached my limit and couldn't continue living in a family where my words and feelings were constantly ignored. My dad was the only person I trusted, and I hoped he could help me escape this unfair situation. My dad worked in a faraway city. His job kept him busy, but when I called, he quickly picked up the phone and listened to me explain the situation. Even though he wasn't nearby, I could sense the worry in his voice. He was the one person I always trusted, and I knew he would find a way to solve this issue reasonably. Dad told me to stay calm, assuring me he would come home as soon as possible to sort things out. However, I knew I had to wait longer because his work didn't allow him to take time off immediately. The feeling of helplessness weighed on me as I could only stay for help from someone who wasn't nearby. While waiting for Dad to return, I tried to control my emotions and continued living in that house, where everything that happened made me feel abandoned. Mom kept defending my sister and wouldn't understand me, which made the family conflict grow even more tense. Whenever I looked at Mom, I felt I had no place in her life. When Dad finally came back after a few days, I could see his concern. He began planning how to resolve the situation. He started talking to Mom, explaining that she needed to reconsider her behavior and that my sister had to take responsibility for her wrong actions. However, Mom reacted very strongly. She defended my sister and said that I was being too harsh, that I didn't understand my sister, and that everything was my fault. Mom didn't want to admit that my sister was wrong, and even when Dad tried to explain, she refused to listen. The conversation between Dad and Mom grew more tense. My dad remained patient, but Mom's stubbornness made me feel like all our efforts were in vain. She still sided with my sister, and I felt like an outsider in my own home. The arguments and words that led nowhere left me standing by, unable to do anything. The feelings of loneliness and helplessness kept growing. Inside me, after seeing how worried I was about keeping my money safe, my dad decided to buy me a security box. It was a small metal box with a lock, not a heavy-duty safe, but just enough to protect the money I had saved over the past 2 years. When my dad gave it to me, I felt more at ease, knowing there was a place to store my money without worrying. I started using the box to store my money. I carefully hid it under my bed, where I thought no one would easily find it. Although I still felt my sister wouldn't give up, I never expected her to go this far. One evening, after a long day of work, I came home to find my box wasn't in its usual spot. I quickly searched the house and eventually found it, opened wide with the coins scattered all over the room. Anger and disappointment flooded through me. I couldn't believe my sister could do something like that. What made me even more frustrated was that my mom showed no remorse or acknowledgement of the situation. She defended my sister, saying it was an accident and that I shouldn't be too hard on her. Mom refused to understand that this wasn't an accident but a deliberate act to satisfy greed. I felt abandoned and disrespected in my own home. Mom always defended my sister without ever realizing that I, too, needed protection and fairness. I didn't know what to do next when every effort I made was destroyed, and no one cared. Not long after the incident with the box, my mom started making a decision that I felt was incredibly unfair. She said I needed to be taught a lesson and wanted to send me to a boarding school far from home. But this wasn't just any school. It was a strict institution with a military-style educational environment. I knew my mom intended to discipline me and make me more serious, but I felt this was a punishment, a way for her to escape responsibility and the awkwardness in the family. Honestly, I couldn't accept this. Not only had my mom failed to resolve the issues between me and my sister, but now she wanted to push me away from the family, as if I were the one to blame for everything. I felt like I was being pushed out of family life and treated as an outsider, while my sister was always protected, even though she was the one causing most of the problems. The more my mom talked about sending me to this boarding school, the more it felt like an act of rejection. In her eyes, I could never do anything right, and staying at home was just an obstacle. She didn't want to acknowledge that the conflicts between us could be solved if she just listened to and understood me more. A feeling of helplessness and sadness overwhelmed me. I didn't know what to do. The boarding school was too far, and I felt like it wasn't a solution to our family's problems, but a way for my mom to avoid facing reality. I didn't want to leave my family or to run away from what was happening, but I also didn't know how to make my mom see me in a better light. I tried to protest, but my mom remained firm. She even said this was an opportunity for me to grow up, learn discipline, and become a better person. But to me, this wasn't growth. It was rejection, a way for me to face difficulties alone, without my family by my side. As things became more tense, my mom didn't stop at just suggesting the boarding school. She went much further. One day, I discovered that my mom had forged my dad's signature to complete my registration process. At that moment, I couldn't believe my eyes. My mom had done this, and I felt deeply betrayed. She should have shown me respect, but deceived my dad instead. When my dad found out, he was furious. I saw him sit silently for a moment. Suddenly, he yelled as if a fire had ignited inside him. "What the hell is going on?" he roared. "What did you do with my signature, Laura?" His voice was low and sharp, like a hammer pounding into stone. He couldn't believe that my mom would do such a thing. Forge his signature to send me away without his consent. Dad had always been very strict, but he had always treated me fairly and lovingly. He clarified that I didn't have to endure such a punishment. "I don't agree with this decision," he said, his voice firm. "I won't let you do this, Laura." At first, my mom tried to explain and justify her actions, but my dad wouldn't listen. He demanded that she stop immediately and not let things escalate any further. My dad's words were like an unbreachable line, and my mom knew she couldn't continue without facing his strong resistance. After being caught and criticized by my dad, my mom had to admit to forging the signature. Although she said she was wrong, it didn't make me feel better. I knew she didn't truly understand the gravity of what she had done. It wasn't just a simple act of dishonesty. It was betrayal and the hurt I had to endure. But instead of acknowledging her mistake, my mom blamed the situation and tried to defend my sister, as if everything was my fault. Even though she admitted her wrongdoing, my mom never changed her stance about me and my sister. She continued to protect my sister unquestioningly despite the wrongdoings she had committed. Every time I tried to express my feelings, my mom would push everything aside, treating me as if I were an ungrateful child. She didn't understand that all I wanted was fairness, and that I couldn't accept my sister continuing to do wrong without facing any consequences. I started to feel like I was no longer part of this family. My mom still saw my sister as innocent, while I, despite my best efforts to keep everything stable, was treated like a stranger. My mom's defense of my sister was incomprehensible to me. I couldn't understand why she didn't realize I deserved to be treated more fairly. Even though my mom admitted she had done wrong, her actions didn't change. Her apology meant nothing to me because she still didn't truly understand the pain I was going through. The feeling of being abandoned in my family grew stronger each day. Finally, after months of constant tension and conflict, my parents decided to divorce. It was a heavy decision, but also a release for both sides. My mom had to pay alimony for my sister, and the forged signature incident inevitably led to a court case. I remember very clearly that day when the court asked my mom to explain herself. Her eyes no longer held the same pride as before, but instead, there was embarrassment and shame. But in the end, it didn't change anything. When my dad and I moved into a new house, I felt like a huge burden had been lifted off my shoulders. Life here was so different. There were no more pointless arguments, no more witnessing my mom's injustice. Living in a peaceful space without enduring my mom's favoritism toward my sister made me feel like I had regained part of my life. However, divorce was not easy. Even though I no longer had to endure the conflicts between my parents, there were still significant changes. I had to adjust to a new life and family, where it was just my dad and me. On lonely nights, I would wonder if everything had really ended, and if I could truly let go of everything that had happened in the past. But still, I knew this was the best choice for my dad and me. My life began to have new sparks of hope. Throughout this time, I learned an essential lesson about fairness, resilience, and the determination never to accept being hurt again. After my parents' divorce, everything in my life changed dramatically. Although I no longer lived with my mom, I felt a sense of peace and security being cared for and protected by my dad. He wasn't perfect, but at least he was the one person who always stood by me and always made me feel that I was valuable and not abandoned. Though my mom still loved my sister, I couldn't deny that she had to take responsibility for her mistakes. She faced the consequences of forging my dad's signature and her blind favoritism toward my sister. Even so, I knew my mom would always love her, and even though we no longer lived together, the love in our family remained undeniable. My story is a series of painful events and an essential lesson about fairness and mutual protection in a family. No matter how hard life gets, I've learned that love and proper protection are the most important things. I will never accept being abandoned or mistreated. I also understand that no matter how many conflicts or challenges arise, love within a family can still bring hope and healing. In the end, I feel stronger. I am no longer a weak child standing in my mother's shadow, but a grown man ready to fight for what I deserve. A new life, though full of challenges, is now in front of me, and it will open new opportunities for me, and I am ready to embrace them. If you were me, would you be ready to face the injustice in your family and find ways to protect yourself? Or do you believe family love can heal all wounds, even when there is apparent favoritism between members? What do you think about my parents' decision to divorce? Was it the best solution for everyone? Or could there have been another way to resolve the conflict without hurting those involved? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear different perspectives from all of you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other meaningful stories in the future. Thank you for watching.